Hello, I'm Commissioner Shulorn Jeter. Welcome to the show, Raising the Standard. This show is brought to you by the Paducah Human Rights Commission. It is the purpose and policy of City of Paducah to safeguard all individuals in the city and McCracken County area from discrimination in public facilities, housing, education, and employment. Some of the areas of discrimination are race, color, disability, religion, sex, and national origin. We, the Paducah City Human Rights Commission, are sworn to protect the interests of all our people's personal dignities and freedoms from discrimination. We advocate for human and civil rights. We investigate, mediate discrimination complaints. We also provide referrals to government agencies. And we regret to inform you that Commissioner David White is not here today. But however, we have our chairperson, Dr. Bernice Belt. Dr. Belt, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you and Commissioner Captain White allowed me to co-host today. It's a joy, and I appreciate all that the both of you are doing. And we also want to thank WKCTC Television Department, where Tom Butler is the executive director, and we have great guys like John and Dan and Brad who take excellent care of us whenever we're here taping on the set. So we thank you, and to the listening audience, viewing audience, we are grateful for you, and we also appreciate all of your comments and your contacts and encouragement. We appreciate you because you are the reason, along with this staff and our guests, that PHRC-Raising the Standard television show is so successful already. Today we have excellent guests, and I guess we all call them all excellent, but the truth is that they are. And today we have Assistant County Attorney Sam Clymer. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thank
Great
you for
to be
being
here with you. Been looking forward to it.
Thank you. We are so excited, and we know you're a busy, busy gentleman, and we're glad that you've come to hang out with us and to do some good stuff, share some good information with the people who count on you, even the people who don't know you yet.
That's right. Well, absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Well, our topic with County Attorney Clymer is going to be adult bullying, and he'll touch on some other things that are interrelated or intermingled with that topic. And the first thing I want to do is to define it, the formal definition, and then County Attorney Clymer is going to take over this segment because it really is about what he has to offer and what he brings to the table today. Bullying is the use of force, threat, and coercion to abuse, intimidate, or aggressively to impose domination over others. The behavior is often repeated and habitual. One essential prerequisite is the perception by the bully or by others of an imbalance of social or physical power. And behavior used is the assertion of domination and includes verbal harassment or threat, physical assault or coercion, and such acts may be directed repeatedly towards particular targets. And so, County Attorney Clymer, if you would fine-tune that definition that I just shared, and then we're going to let you go forward, and every now and then we may interject, but we're excited about what you're going to do today.
Yes.
Well, great. Yeah, that definition, that's an excellent definition. That hits on just about every facet of bullying, be it juvenile bullying, adult bullying, workplace bullying, anything that you're going to run into. What I see quite often in dealing with specifically adult bullying, you know, a lot of folks, when you think about bullying, they think schoolhouse bullying, schoolyard bullying,
Right.
children pushing one another down to try to gain dominance, something of that nature. And you'd really like to think that as we mature and we get older, then these schoolyard tactics are going to go by the wayside. But truly, they never do. You know, the bullying is always there. It's just the method for carrying out the bullying that changes. You know, people get a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more life experience, and they kind of know a little bit now about what they can and can't get away with. And that's the difficulty in adult bullying. And specifically with adult bullying, what I see is it's most often a non-physical type of use of tactics that are employed to humiliate, intimidate, and dominate other adults. And you know, you see this all the time. And I really think that once folks get to view this segment and they hear what we say about adult bullying and the tactics that are used, they're going to look around and see this going on constantly. on a daily basis, probably on an hourly basis, and wherever it is they conduct their activities throughout the day. The goal of the adult bully, as I've seen, is to use these, a lot of times hard to detect, non-physical, usually all verbal type of tactics, just to intimidate somebody and just to gain some form of dominion over another person for either the bully's own narcissistic purposes of making themselves feel higher than some other individual, or the actual goal of attaining some type of leg up or showing somebody who's boss, something like that. And please do feel free to stop me at any time you want to interject or ask me something about this. But in dealing with adult bullying, it's so, like we alluded to earlier, it's so much more, I guess, not mature, because the activities are not mature, but it's a mature way of thinking. Folks have grown up and they realize what children get in trouble for, what they can get away with, and that's not what adults are going to do.
Yes.
So the 5, I guess, I hate to categorize, but there are 5 different observable types of adult bullies. And number 1, and one of the most, I guess, troublesome, well, the second most troublesome type of adult bully is the narcissistic adult bully. And this is a person who, and I'm not trying to wear the hat of a psychologist or psychiatrist here, it's just something that goes with the territory. If you're going to prosecute, you got to get to know these things.
Right.
And so the narcissistic type of adult bully, this is a person who, they just truly don't care about other people's feelings. That the narcissistic bully cares about their personal advancement, and they're going to step on who they need to advance their personal advancement. That's just the way it is. And this person is going to be one of the individuals that you can peg in a crowd a lot of times if they're engaging in belittling of other individuals or making a joke at the expense of another person and laughing with everybody about it. Because this person will seem like they have a very big personality and they're very secure in themselves. But in reality, they have just a very brittle narcissistic nature, and they have to have the bullying to build them up to where they want to be. And they just don't operate without it, and they don't feel right if they're not doing it.
So in a way, that's a sense of insecurity in that person, correct?
That's right. That's right. And a lot of times, I'm sure we'll talk later in a little bit more detail about the correlation between bullies and the bullied. A lot of times the folks that you see as being bullies, they were at one time either bullies as a child or they were bullied as a child. And a lot of times the narcissistic type of behavior stems from a child who was the victim of bullying. And they've been broken down and they feel bad about themselves. And the only way that they can feel better about themselves is if they actually take an active bullying role against somebody else. But in order to do that, you have to lack empathy for somebody else. You would think if you were made to feel bad, you wouldn't want that for somebody, but they don't care.
The narcissistic, and it's a personality disorder, narcissism.
That's right.
The narcissistic personality disorder characteristics include lack of empathy and compassion.
Right.
They appear or seem to not have any conscience, but of course we all have conscience. We all have a conscience. But the narcissistic personality disorder is a person who has fully let go of the awareness of the responsibility of acting out a good conscience.
Right. Internally, anyway, they can paint the picture that they do care, but truly they don't. And so they'll utilize what negative tactics they have to advance their own goals, and they couldn't care less about it.
Would it be safe to say, County Attorney, that the narcissist is also, as a father, as a husband, maybe even as a coworker or friend, or so-called friend, or frenemy, as young people would say.
They'll be your friend if it'll benefit them. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, in order for the narcissist to be successful, and they are successful at what they do, especially if it's gone on for a while because they become the habitual bully, is that they forfeit marriages, relationships with their children, with siblings, co-workers, even people in church, neighbors. What are some of the examples that you have seen in court and during investigations that would involve some areas like that?
Well, I see it not only in court and investigations, but truly in day-to-day life. if you ladies were just to reflect for a moment on some of the folks that you run into, you know, maybe not all the time, but people that stand out in your minds that, I mean, I'm not coming up with a specific example, but I can think of the type. And obviously I wouldn't name anybody.
Right.
But I'm thinking of an individual that I'm aware of, the type of individual anyway. And just like we said, very, very loud, very boisterous, everybody's best friend, slap you on the back and glad to see you and all this business. But it's also one of the same individuals that has no problem whatsoever in maybe even using some of the other bullying tactics, like the non-physical or the verbal bullying tactics, to, after they shake so-and-so's hand, turn around to this other individual and say, see that guy I was just talking about over there, well, he did this, that, and the other, and
Yes.
start a rumor about that person.
Right.
And it's just, that's one of the bullying tactics. And in a narcissistic bully, it doesn't mean that's the only way they go about it. They'll utilize every tactic, but they'll do it with total narcissism, and they don't care about the consequences. And like you said, they will absolutely forfeit relationships if that relationship isn't moving them toward their goal. I mean, they're very goal-oriented. A lot of times they're very successful, but their success is defined in a little bit different way than I think that you and I would define success.
In terms of prosecution, or at least to get to that point from the time someone is bullied and badly, I mean, there's the subtle and then there's the absolutely horrendous bullying, because there are stages and phases. The verbal bullying is so difficult to prove. And then something you said a moment ago that triggered a thought for me, and that is implied violence.
Right.
That slamming and breaking and throwing, but not hitting you when they throw, locking you out, taking your keys or what have you to keep you from being mobile, to going where you need to go. And that's so difficult to prove. But it is such a tremendous gateway to getting to the physical side of it. And so that transitional type of bullying, what would you say about that?
Well, that's the kind of bullying that we would look at and identify as maybe a crossbreed between the nonverbal, or I'm sorry, the verbal bullying and the physical bullying. You know, because that's bullying versions type 2 and 3 that we're going to talk about.
Oh, good.
And the physical bullying, while it's not going to be the kind of stuff that we identified before that we see on the schoolyard. It's not going to be somebody coming up to their coworker in their cubicle and knocking them out of their chair or something like that, or saying, "What's that on your shirt?" and slapping them in the face. That's not going to happen. What the physical type of bullying and adult bullying that we see is what you identified, Dr. Belt, and that's the implied threats, even like the looming over a person, coming up to somebody in their cubicle maybe at work and looming over them, and maybe even touching them with your arm a little bit, just enough to make them feel that the bully is there and that they're a threat, and they better, you know, in their lower position, they better look up to them and do as they say. And that's about as physical as it gets a lot of times. Or it could also include the physical act of maybe stealing someone's property, something like that. You know, trying to teach somebody who's boss, I can do what I want to you without any type of penalty, with total impunity, because I'm that dominant over you. That's what the bully's saying. So they'll steal their property. And obviously the course of action to that is come down and in response, come to the county attorney's office, get a police report, and we'll look at taking charges against the person. So you're not absolutely without recourse by any means in that situation.
Well, what about text messages? You know, that would fall under verbal bullying, I assume.
Right, absolutely.
And is that hard to prove in court?
Well, the good thing about the social media is that there's always going to be a record. And there's some pretty significant hurdles that we have to jump over to get hard copies of someone's text message content, their Facebook content, anything. But the positive thing, the thing to take away from it is there is a way of proving. You know, it's almost impossible to bring a successful case against a verbal bully that's just like making statements or that's starting rumors against their target, because you know, it's all hearsay. And unless somebody has a recorder queued up at the very time to catch the bully starting the rumor, or saying the negative things about the other person. You just can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. But what we do in a situation where someone has communicated with another coworker or individual, their intended victim, they've communicated with them negatively through email, text message, things of that nature, we can actually subpoena the social media host, the provider, and we'll issue what's called a subpoena ducis tecum. It means a subpoena ducis tecum means, it's Latin, means to produce a thing. And they'll be required to produce the written records that will show the typeset that was sent and that's saved in perpetuity, really, in that machine and on that account. And then we can get that, and that goes a long, long way toward proving the case. But that's about the most successful way.
Do you think
that's kind of like the cyberbullying you and I were talking
Right.
about
Yes.
a while back?
Yes. Do you think the more mainstream media talks about bullying, it's been a rise in the local area?
Well, I think if anything, the education that's been brought to the people about bullying has seen the rise because people are able to identify bullying. I think that, just with this segment that we're running right now being a prime example, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to see this.
Right.
And, without beating the dead horse of comparing the schoolyard bullying to the workplace, but that's what they think of.
Yes.
They think bullying probably ended in high school.
Well, yes, before I even got into this and learned about bullying, especially on media, when I see these big burly guys, oh, I've been bullied, it's like, what?
Oh, yeah.
But the things you talk about now, yes, I've seen those. I've seen those little gestures in the office
absolutely.
or with people that I know.
Yeah, and that's why, and I don't think that there's been a rise of bullying by any means. I just think that it's constant, and it's always there, and it's just awareness that's been brought about. And this show is going to bring about a whole lot of awareness toward the adult side of it, because it's so unbelievably obvious. Once you're educated and you know what to look for, and some folks are even going to be sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's something simple. We may not even realize that that's what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And one that can be very damaging. And again, this with the adult bullying, a lot of it's going to be psychological, and it's going to be the verbal, the non-physical. But one of the last types of identified bullying types, I guess, is the secondary bullying. And the secondary bully is kind of like the sidekick, or maybe not even a sidekick associated with the bully.
Right.
They're just the individual who didn't initiate the contact, didn't initiate the bullying, is not really going to stand to gain anything by the victim being put down and dominated, but instead they're actually scared that they are going to become the next victim. So
Exactly.
as a means to insulate themselves and protect themselves from the bullying tactics of this bully, they're going to jump right in there too, and they're going to bully the victim. And they're going to cheer on the bully. And so now a person has gone from having the threat of one person going after them to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. It just keeps going and going. It gets worse and worse. And I mean, can you imagine how difficult it would be for the target of a workplace bullying to deal with one bully? Now you got all your coworkers that are supposed to have your back, and they're jumping on the bandwagon too.
Yes.
It's pretty unthinkable, really.
Yes. Well, self-preservation is a mighty, mighty spirit. It's a mighty emotion.
That's right.
And I guess felt as a mighty need to fulfill.
It is. Yeah.
Also, I remember as a child being bullied, and to me, this girl seemed 10 feet tall, and she could have made 3 of me. And I was the little country girl with freckles and the bangs and the braids, and raised by a very strong family. I was raised in the church from the womb, and quite honestly, County Attorney Clymer, I did not know people could act like that. I absolutely had a huge awakening. And she harassed me, and we didn't call it bullying then. I don't know what they called it then. I think I was in the 5th grade.
Just picking.
Yeah, just picking on you.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
I'm just
yeah,
picking.
maybe. I think you're right. I think that's what they would call it. And but one day I got so tired of this girl, And she said, meet me in whatever room it was, meet me at lunchtime. And I thought, okay, it's either now or never. She's going
That's
to
right.
kill me
Yeah.
or something. And so I did. I met her there, and I got there before she did. And I'll tell you what I did, County Attorney, and I'm glad that I'm a big girl now. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you might be trying to, take me back to court.
Well, let's just hope it wasn't a
but-
felony because there's no statute of limitations. Let me just caution you there. Was it?
I got there a few minutes earlier than she had summoned me to get there. And I just looked around the whole room. And I remember something my daddy said. My daddy said, size up the environment. See what you can use to protect yourself. I saw all of these chairs. And I'm thinking,
right.
if I have to hurl every chair in this classroom at this girl in order to preserve my body, that's what I'm going to do. And so when she came in the room, and I was just determined, and she came in the room, and I guess she saw this different persona, and she looked at me very closely, and I had a chair in my hand too.
Oh, yeah.
And then she just turned around, and then she left. She never bothered me again, and no bully
Yeah.
ever bothered Bernice again
Well, yeah.
for the time that I was in that elementary school. I would not recommend that to everybody.
Well, no, that could backfire.
And
But
I know, and that brings me to a point, County Attorney, that those who get sick and tired of being bullied often will revert to some level of violence, which
That's
is,
right.
well, help us with that, because that's
Well,
not good either.
And I talk a lot of times when I'm dealing with a school group, and I know, of course, we're dealing with adults at this time, but I think that the lesson that we discuss with the children is equally applicable, because the kids, they're facing bullying in a little bit more in-your-face kind of way. They may have somebody actually shoving them down, or actually putting, going hands-on, as you'd say, with them. And what I try to impose on the kids when I'm talking to them is that you got to understand that, number one, unfortunately, bullying is part of it. It's not going anywhere, because it's just the human nature of these identifiable types of folks that we've been talking about, and they're going to do it. How you react to it and how you attempt to alleviate the problem is what we need to consider. That's the focal point. And I would tell them that back in, well, it wasn't really that long ago, but when I was in elementary school and when I was in high school, things were different, even back then. I graduated from Tillman in 1996. And that doesn't seem that long ago, but it was a world of difference.
Oh, yes.
And I remember that, if there was a bully that was picking on me or picking on my friends, not to say that we resorted to violence against the bully, but we would, like you said, we would meet the threat.
Right,
We would handle
right,
our business.
right.
Somebody like that, a lot of times they're a weak person.
Yes.
And if they expect to just be able to steamroll over people. And if somebody stands up to them, then, ooh, this just got a little bit more difficult. And number one, I'm not mentally strong enough to handle this threat, and I probably don't have the belief in my physicality to be able to handle this threat either. So I'm backing off. That's what the bullies used to do.
Well, this girl, when she became an adult, she became even more intimidating. She got into a lot of trouble, and until I guess she had an epiphany, or she got tired of going to jail.
Right.
But that leads me to the last few minutes of this segment, is to talk about how juvenile bullying is the gateway to adult bullying.
That's right. And we just very, very briefly hit on that before, but it's almost 100% traceable to one of two events. The adult bully was either, number one, the bully as a child, and maybe they never were called out on it, they never were challenged, and they found that bullying worked pretty well for them, so they're going to keep on with it. Or secondly, and they were the actual victim of a bully back then. And they saw that, oh my gosh, this person that bullied me, they used these tactics, they dominated me, there's nothing I wouldn't do. So I'm going to use that against somebody now that I'm big, and then I can do it.
Or maybe there was this, psychological twist and turn that happened, and they simply lost control. And that's the only way they can believe they can have some control left in their lives.
Yeah, that's right. And that's that little bit of that narcissistic bully coming in there, finding that by bullying is the way that they feel important, or they feel bigger, or preferred over other folks. And
The importance of parents getting counseling, and I know that parents who bully, they're not thinking about getting their children counseling, I'm sure. But parents who are not the bullies, who have to think seriously about getting counseling for their children because their children can't deal with it alone. Do you ever have to make recommendations at the court level to?
well, we actually don't. When it gets into actually making recommendations for a for-profit type of entity, which most every counseling service is
Right,
going to be to a
right.
certain extent, we have to take a hands-off approach on that
see.
because, I mean, I say unfortunately because I'd like to be able to direct folks toward counselors and therapists that I know will do an excellent job, but you know, we're here for everybody, and we need to be a neutral advocate for all folks in the
Okay.
community. So I can't actually do that.
All right.
I'd like to,
Right,
but I
right.
can't in my official capacity.
Okay.
Now, if we were after work talking,
Yes.
and maybe I'll mention a little something that'd be helpful, but not officially.
Well, that's good for everyone to know.
Right.
We have a couple of minutes. Commissioner Jeter, what would you
Well,
like to say before we give County Attorney the last word?
Well, I would just like to say that as the PHRC board, we do have education initiative in the high schools and the middle schools where we're starting to educate the kids on bullying. So, I mean, that's one of the things
Yeah.
that we're really proud of, what we're doing, to put
There
that
we
little
go.
niche in there to try to curb the bullying in this area.
Well,
But
excellent.
we are so glad you decided to join us today. We know you're a busy man.
Yeah, I've been
but
looking
took
forward
the
to
time out
this.
for
Yeah.
us.
Thank
we
you.
really are really glad about it. Do you want to share anything about your family, or tell us about your family?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about me. I tend to be pretty good at doing that.
Okay.
No, I was born and raised here in McCracken County.
Okay.
And my father, Craig Clymer, he's actually Judge Craig Clymer, he's a circuit judge here in town. He started out as a police officer, did 9 years at the Paducah Police Department, went to law school, became a district judge, then a circuit judge, and so that's now what he's doing, is public service. And that's kind of the footsteps that I followed in.
Okay.
I worked a little bit over a year at the Sheriff's Department, then went to law school, and came back, and I had a civil career for a little bit where I did mainly civil rights defense work. A lot of people don't realize that, but I did that, and then transitioned over into being a prosecutor. But probably the best influence, though, was my mom, who has essentially perfected good, clean living. And so I try to take a lot from her as well.
There's always a mother behind a
I
good
know
man.
it,
That's right.
I know
A
it.
mother and a
He's
wife.
He's
That's
a
right.
bad dude, y'all. He's a
Yeah.
bad dude.
Yeah.
And we want to welcome you, and we want to welcome you into our viewing audience of PHRC
Surely.
Raising the Standard TV show. And we're going to sign off. Unfortunately, we could talk about this all day, but we
Yes.
certainly hope you appreciate it. And thank you again, County Attorney Sam Clymer. You're going to be hearing from him a lot
My
more
pleasure.
in the near future. Tune in again. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of the year, as a matter of fact.